Hi guys. Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. Who's up? Welcome to my day six of my language challenge around self-care, highlighting the fact that the very beginnings of self-care are the way we talk about ourselves, the language that we use. And during these lives, I've been sharing examples of times that we can consider our use of language, because it's all very well saying, yeah, you just need to change how you talk about yourself. But it's actually being giving concrete examples and being able to call ourselves out, just be aware of what we're saying, we're aware of the language that we're using. And the key message for me is how the use of language is limiting us in whichever area that we are talking about. You know, I talked about limiting our goals, limiting our ability to perform because of the way we talk about ourselves, and we're setting ourselves up, uh, giving ourselves a lower expectation than maybe we're capable of. And it's also thinking why we're doing that. I mean, I talked about, Susan Boyle and audition where she just came out with it. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. And that was a clear example of why people avoid saying it, because she received a lot of negative responses to that clear way she expressed herself. Today, I am going to talk briefly about handling criticism, handling people giving that pushback, giving that response when you say something or when you do something that somebody else doesn't like. And this is a topic that's fairly close to my heart, because it's something that I have managed over the years, and not necessarily particularly well. And thinking about how I was going to share with you this morning has given me some insight into my own behavior and the language that I use, and why I have for so many years protected myself with the language I use and my behavior, because I do not like confrontation. I associate criticism or disagreement with confrontation, and with arguments, and with discomfort, and with relationship breakdowns, and with escalation of emotions, rather than simply seeing it as a disagreement, a differing of opinions. And my brother and I have talked about this. There is one of two ways to respond, for example, when someone shares an opinion. You can agree with it, or you can disagree with it. There doesn't appear to be any middle ground. And in fact, when you take middle ground, when you say, I actually don't have an opinion on that, it's immediately seen as you disagree with the person. And I'm suggesting there's a similar issue around criticism. We have one of two ways of responding to criticism from somebody. We either get defensive and defend our standpoint, or defend our opinion, or defend what it is that they disagree with, or we withdraw and become self critical. So we may just accept the criticism in the moment, but it's not in a good way, because we then go off and we ruminate and we chew over what we did wrong, what we could have done better. That this always happens to us, and we become self critical. And that was definitely my tendency. I rarely ever get defensive. It's normally I become self critical. Now, the issue here is I'm suffering a bit from hay fever and I got an itchy nose. Excuse me. The different the difficulty here is that when we become self-critical, we often then start drawing in stuff from other areas. And it's not a one-off example. It's yeah, because that also happens here and that happens there. And again, we go back to that generalizing. We've had one piece of criticism, and suddenly that destroys our whole view of who we are as a person and our capacity to perform or do anything. So, going back to this idea that we've got one of two ways of responding, we then can often set ourselves up, which is this was my forte, to avoid confrontation, to avoid criticism. And we become masters at doing that by the way that we talk and the language that we use to set us up to be safe and protected. And this is linked back to the limiting behaviors, because now we're setting ourselves up to be safe. We're not challenging ourselves. We're putting ourselves in a position where people are not going to criticize us, and we're rushing around trying to please everybody. And we're using language like, I'll try, I'll do my best, I'll see what I can do. We're making ourselves available when we may not be available. And this type of language that we use is incredibly limiting, and it's self-destructive because it's putting ourselves in a position where we cannot function to the best of our abilities. And this is where a lot of people come to me and they're looking at their lives as total chaos. It's all about other people. Other people have got the priority. I'm going to try and help so-and-so. I'm going to try and fix this for somebody else. I'm going to try and do that. And I always think of dear old Yoda, there is no try. And I am trying. I have done my best to eliminate try from my vocabulary, because I know when I'm using that word, I am setting myself up to protect myself from criticism and to appear to be doing the right thing. I know in my heart that I'm not committed to whatever I've said, but I am trying to avoid blunt, no, I can't do it. And once I started to see myself that way, see my behavior that way, and see my language as the issue, it's incredibly liberating. And you start to go, flip it around. How do you feel when someone says, I'll try, I'll do my best, versus, no, I can't fit that in, or I can't be there, I can't do that. That decisive, they don't go on and give excuses. This is a big, big difference. They just say no. And if we can get our head around the fact that our language is at the heart of our decision making, it is where we need to start in terms of self-care. And we need to be thinking, what am I doing to protect myself from criticism or potential conflict? And what am I saying that isn't actually true to me, true to who I am? And something else that popped up when I was, because this is a subject that I could go on and on about, from the point of view of stepping outside of ourselves and looking at the big picture. I love that quote from Stephen Covey, which is The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And one of them, and it really hits home in this example, is seek first to understand. So when someone's criticizing you, you can do one of two things. You can seek first to understand them and why they might be criticizing you. And then, depending how you respond to that criticism later, you can also self reflect instead of self criticizing, self reflect and try and understand why you responded the way that you responded. So, if you got defensive, seek to understand why you spoke that way. Why did you protect yourself in that way? And if you become self-critical, if you withdraw and start criticizing yourself, seek to understand why you might be doing that. Why have you taken on board that person's opinion as being correct? And this takes us on to the possibility of a new behavior and a new way of approaching criticism, which is something I am working on, which is linked in to acceptance. And it's linked into the opinion versus the example I gave of when someone expresses an opinion and they seek your opinion and you say, I actually don't really have one on that topic. It's a similar thing. That's okay. I'm going to accept that criticism. That person may be right as far as they're concerned, but I do not need to agree with them, disagree with them, or respond in any either or way. I can simply say, that is the way they see it, and that's okay. So the magic words for me have been, that's okay. And then what you can tack on is, and I've just written down my examples to keep me on track, it's okay to be upset about it. It's okay for them to have that thought. And it's okay for you to do nothing about it. And the interesting thing here is it leads on to something else, which is that awareness of the language and the words that we are consuming and taking on board. You know, we're super aware of food. We're super aware, well, some of us are. There's definitely that climate of change in the air around nutrition and what we're consuming in the way of nutrition or not. We've also been pretty aware of visually and auditory input, right? What are we listening to on a regular basis? And what are we watching on a regular basis? And we have had that analogy of the diet, you know, I take a news diet. I mean, I've just canned it from my life and it has been life changing. But I'm suggesting also we need to think of a language diet and what words are we allowing ourselves to use, or what words are we allowing to impact on us. So if we're repetitively using derogatory words for ourselves and for other people, that is what's in us. Well, that's what is being absorbed into us, into our brains, into our thoughts. And I don't see any difference, you know, between that and what we're watching and listening to. And we've got to remember that words are everywhere. But I'm being specific now, not just about images and music, for example, or other people's words, but our own words. So think about that. You know, is your language of nutritional value? Do an audit of your language. Is it supporting you or is it limiting you? So there's my thoughts for this morning on handling criticism, and maybe this idea of acceptance, that that's okay for that person to have that thought. It's okay for you to be upset about it. And it's also okay for you to not need to do anything. You don't need to self-correct. You don't need to correct the other person. You can simply let it pass over you. It is not going to be your choice to engage with that. And I've heard some brilliant analogies, like going up to the old food table, smorgasbord, whatever you like to call it, buffet. You don't pick at something that you don't like, you simply walk past it. Although, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you probably complain. Uh, you choose what you want, and maybe we need to be doing more of that. We can walk past it, we can let it wash over us and not let it become part of who we are. Have a fantastic Saturday. I will be doing my last session tomorrow. I'll be doing an overview of the 7 days, and I look forward to seeing you there. Don't forget, if you want a copy of my self-care guide, I will attach a link to it, or just drop me a direct message, and I will catch up with you tomorrow.